Indigenous and Aborigine people, we live according to something called animism. Well, in the Western world, we're taught that there's animate and inanimate, living and non-living. Animism perceives, understands, or believes that there is no non-living. It all lives. Everything. Everything in this room is alive because it is only part of that which is and always has been. We don't believe that there's literally any time of creation, nor will there be literally any time of destruction. It's all cyclic. And so because of that, we're at peace. We have an inner sense of peace and unity with everything. There's no death, there's only change. There's no birth, there's only change. Now, I use physics to try to explain this to the Western world. And there I use the first law of thermodynamics, which says that matter or energy can never be created or destroyed, but only transformed. E equals mc squared. All matter is energy, and all energy is matter. And if neither can be created or destroyed, but only transformed, then when does it cease to be?
Hi, I'm Constantina Malia. This is podcast Boldly Feminine of my creation, and it's my pleasure today to have a guest with me. I wanted to introduce that injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere. And I had said I would introduce a Native American, or better said, Indigenous co-host to you in my Boldly Feminine introduction. I would like to remind those listening that 90% of the ecological biodiversity on our planet is being safeguarded by the small 5% of Indigenous peoples that inhabit this planet. These include the tribes of the Savannah in Africa, such as the Maasai, the Maori of Australia, the Inuit of Alaska, the Aymara of Peru, the Kokibara of Amazon, the Asmat of New Guinea, and many, many more. In spite of their devotion to preserve the divergent species that cohabit this small blue planet we all share, 70% of animal species have disappeared since 1970. The protective, respectful Indigenous culture of foresight that coexists by planning 7 generations into the future has been obliterated by consumerism, the consequences of destructive capitalism, mass consumption, and the normalization of immediate gratification. It's my pleasure to introduce you today, Tanori, a wonderful human of the Yaqui tribe. The Yaqui are an UTO-AZTECAN speaking Indigenous peoples widespread in the Americas, but who principally inhabit the Western Hemisphere of North America, all the way from lower Canada to the far reaches of the Yucatan and Mexico. The Pasqua Yaqui, our tribe, are based in Tucson, Arizona, and it's the only federally recognized Yaqui tribe in the United States. Though, as mentioned, their people are spread widely over vast areas of the Americas. So there was a period of armed conflict that began in 1533 that extended up until 1929, so the beginning of the Second World War, called the Yaqui Wars, fought between New Spain, its successor, the Mexican state, and the indigenous Yaqui Indians. Over the course of nearly 400 years, massacre after massacre was brought repeatedly against the Yaqui by either the Spanish or the Mexicans in an attempt that failed at complete genocide, but forced the deportation of Yaquis into slavery as far as the last reaches of the Yucatan Peninsula. So I can see from Tanori, he's very tall and very tall people in stature, and due to their physical strength, you can use a specimen, they were relentless in the defense of their land, peoples and customs for a century upon century, and to this day. They have settlements high in the mountains of northern Sonora, where they're virtually unvisited by outsiders. But they keep themselves, and these factors have been instrumental in preserving their language, their customs, their culture over hundreds of years until today. I'm going to have Tanori join us now, and it's very helpful that he's actually studied his culture as part of his university education. I also want to ask him to speak of his experience being Yaqui, born on lands that his ancestors inhabited and governed for millennia, but to which he actually today has no rights. I had so many questions about passports, laws, governance, law enforcement, tribal normals, American norms, and so many factors that affected him personally, that affected you personally, and that you said it disaffected you socially. So as per my podcast with Jane Elliott, the diversity educator, Parnan, let's reiterate one golden rule. Race is a concept and species is a fact. We, as a human species, all began our journey to populate the planet from the southernmost tip of Africa almost 2 million years ago and today, we've all been mostly subjugated to white man's rule across the planet. So Tanori, please share what it meant to grow up Yaqui in South Los Angeles, Arizona, Sonora, and wherever have you felt you belonged, since these cities and places, which were your tribal homelands, by right now had geographical and political demarcations that erased, not just ignored your cultural rights to the land. This is in light of our first ever. I'm sure you're very proud and pleased that you had your first ever Indigenous Peoples Day day and a half ago.
Yes, I was. Hello, you awesome leaders. Tanori here. Um, well, yes, as beautiful Queen has just stated, we finally had our first day this Monday. After centuries and centuries of punishment, I will call it. Punishment that was unnecessary. I wouldn't call it war. I wouldn't call it extermination, which is what it was. I would call it punishment. After so many centuries of punishment that my people went through, we finally have a noticed day where we are bringing back up to the light. For so many centuries, we have been pushed down, we've been shunned, we've been hiding behind rocks out of fear. Out of fear, out of a lack of knowledge, due to us not being provided with the proper information. Not all Yaquis know their background. Not all Yaquis know what they're capable of, know their history, from the food to when the war started,
Sure.
to the details of the clothing that they should wear. There's a
I-
lot of brothers and sisters who are lost out there. And due to this beautiful day that we have been blessed with this Monday, a lot of our brothers and sisters who have been lost and have gone through this filter of a game that we were killed because we didn't wish to be a part of. Finally, we get to find our voice. Finally, we get to find who we truly are. We are lost no longer. We are getting closer and closer every day. And due to this Monday, it's just the
Well,
most beautiful thing I've ever heard.
Well, one of the things we had discussed prior to today,
Yeah.
I have other friends that are of Indigenous background, and one of them, Bowden, is both Hopi and Navajo.
Yeah.
And I had posted a picture on Instagram of these two children that were of different races, even though we're going to call it a concept.
Yeah.
But one was a dark-skinned child and one was a white-skinned child, and in the background of that image was an Hispanic child.
Yeah.
And it was meant to show that children don't care. They just respond to energy and if people are nice or not. And
Of course.
when I posted that picture, I asked him, I said, does it bother you that even today your race isn't represented in these images? It's still either is Asian, right? It's still sort of simplified and to the more dominant groups. And he was like, not really. I'm kind of used to it. We don't really
Okay.
protest. And I think that was your response to me as well. That
Correct.
that people have become so used to being subjugated, it's normalized.
Correct. Which, again, starting Monday, just opened Pandora's box. Something that has been shut for too many years. Finally, we have a voice. Finally, we are coming up and out of those mountains and realizing that we need to be represented, that we too matter, that we too are beautiful, that we too also have a lot to offer.
One,
And like, I'm sorry.
no, sure. You're one of the things we had also talked about is how did this land become populated? And as a human species, we all migrated out of Africa and crossed land bridges to populate the planet.
Correct.
So when we look at the journey of the natives in the Western continent, all the way from Greenland and Alaska down to Tierra del Fuego, we can see that there was the whole landmass was populated before the colonialization of
Correct.
both the English and the Spanish.
Correct.
And the French actually were here for a while too.
And the fact that going back to, before I answer that, going back to normalizing the white skin, normalizing what represents the community. Growing up, that really psychologically messes with you, where you grow up where you don't find something that represents you. You don't love yourself. You don't
felt that's how it
accept
affected you.
yourself.
That's how it affected
You
you.
don't know who you are. You don't fit into this cookie cutter little box that was created. So there is no representation of you. There is no information of you.
Well, I guess there's no
History.
acknowledgement that you even exist by that,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly. So as a species, growing up, you already go through a lot, especially in your teenage years. you're blossoming, you're mentally, spiritually, emotionally, physically molding. When you every species, not even race, has turbulence in that era, in life in general. But there is a category of people who were blessed with knowledge of their history, who were blessed with representation of them, who were blessed with an example in which they can follow. So therefore, I can say that their journey was slightly different, a little less turbulence on their flight, as I like to compare it, which as to the Yaquis, as to the indigenous Latinos, African Americans, women, LGBTQ plus, everyone who has been trying to be kept in the corner, hidden away, had no representation, and our flights were extremely turbulent. And Indigenous Day, I'm getting the chills as I speak about this, is not only an Indigenous Day. Indigenous Day represents everyone who has been hiding, who has been pushed down.
I think what you wouldn't identify with is, say, my experience of my parents being immigrants and me being born in Canada specifically, but still I identified with being North American. I
Mhm.
now live in the United States. I have dual citizenship. I've lived in Mexico. I'm very close to Mexican culture. Um, there's an identity that comes with geography.
Hmm.
And so for you, there was no division. What you are is where you were born,
Correct.
whereas my territory is adopted.
Hmm.
And so there's a different loyalty, I think, that comes with adoption too, at least from my side. I'm very protective of it
Hmm.
because I realize that it's an accident. It's just an accident of birth that I was born on a different continent.
Mhm.
And so I personally feel very respectful of the fact that I'm on another land than what fate had planned for me for thousands of years before this.
Correct. And speaking about being blessed with that gift of being in a land, it's a lot of people don't know, like you just stated earlier, we were here a long time ago.
Yeah.
We were here before the French. We were here before the Spaniards. We were here before.
Those thousands of years. I think the canals of the canals of Scottsdale in Arizona
Correct.
are 6,000 years old. The water systems they created, the
Correct.
pyramids of the Incas, the Mayans, I mean, they're
Correct.
thousands of years old, clearly to have evolved to the point to have these complex societies and complex social systems and complex
Correct.
even monetary systems and
Yeah.
trade systems. Obviously, they had this was their land.
Of course. Of course. And I don't bring it up in a sense of we were here first, it belongs to us. We are all family.
Mhm.
Family does not see race. Family does not see color, sexual preference. We are not division. We
I
are
don't
not
know.
divided. We are one.
I see division in families where there is differences.
Yeah.
There's a picture of a family that the parents were biracial.
Hmm.
The mother white, father dark, and the children were born one blonde, blue-eyed, and the other completely dark, sisters.
Correct.
And so I'm sure they were treated very differently in life
Oh, yeah.
by society.
Of course. Of course. And I agree with that to a certain extent where due to society, we've been manipulated to think that. And by family, I don't mean blood. By
Right.
family, I do mean connection.
Sure.
I do mean acceptance. I do mean unconditional love.
Hmm.
So the reason why I'm saying that is because this land belongs to all of us. And what I'm trying to say is that we get to learn how to live as one, as
So you don't think that most of your tribes people feel territorial, disenfranchised,
mm,
angry, resentful?
oh, definitely. Oh, yes, that very, very naturally, Yaquis are very territorial. That was the reason behind us outlasting the Aztecs, outlasting the majority of the indigenous that is now considered Mexico. We had our systems already. Everything you see here in the United States, from the court system to the police system to jails, everything that you see that we have now, in a sense, of this little monopoly game that we live in, Yaquis had that centuries ago. They
Mm.
already had it centuries ago. So we were very advanced for our time. Um, and we were proud of that. We're proud of that. We were able to produce that within ourselves.
And has it been maintained? Like, do people still speak Yaqui like fairly openly between
I would
themselves?
say the elderly are a little more knowledgeable with it. They themselves can't speak it fluently. It's rare to find someone who can
Mm.
speak it fluently, translate it, write it, etc.
Is it a
They're
written
out there.
language as well? Like, did you have texts and things?
Correct.
Yeah.
It's out there. It's out there. But because of the colonization and the brainwashing of cutting our hair, sending us to schools, away from our tribes, away from our communities, away from the elderlies who spoke it, to speaking just English, to teaching us Spanish. It was lost. It was lost while in the process. Again, as I stated in the beginning, there's a lot of Yaquis out there that don't know anything about their heritage. I wouldn't be surprised if they don't even know that they're Yaqui. We're everywhere. We are everywhere, and federally speaking, Tucson, Arizona, are the only location where they're considered.
Well, they're officially recognized. They fought for that document.
Correct, which is
Yeah,
half of a century old, and we've been here for how long?
right.
So, looking at the positive, that's beautiful. That's beautiful, and that's the beginning. But you also asked me on how you become documented. How do you become a part of it?
Well, I was
It's
actually asking, I think we have discussed, maybe I didn't bring it up here,
Yeah,
but how do you travel? Like, do you have an American passport? Do you have a
correct.
Mexican passport? Can you have either, both? Is there such a thing as an indigenous people's passport?
That's a very sensitive subject. To begin with, to be a part of the Yaqui tribe, you need to be pretty much born into that tribe. You need to be raised within that tribe. You cannot be quote unquote an outsider, if that makes any sense,
So you have
like
to live
from
on tribal
Sonora.
lands?
Correct. You literally need to be born into it, have a sister, a brother, an uncle, someone who is within the tribe, um, that can be a reference for you to even get the process started to be a part of the indigenous. There's a lot of people from Sonora, like my
So
family, who are
I
there.
would imagine because the borders are arbitrary as opposed to what the land dictates and how the families have lived for centuries,
Yes,
it's very probable you have relatives that are in Sonora, relatives that are in New Mexico,
correct.
relatives. And so,
Oh yeah, yeah, everywhere. I wouldn't be surprised, and this is what drives me. That's what drives me. We are lost. Our brothers and sisters are lost, and we need to find each other again. Numbers is everything. This is a numbers game, and we
meaning that you'll
need
be erased if you don't stick together?
correct, and we already have been.
Mm.
There's 2006, 13,000 people were considered officially Yaqui. That's speaking 13,000 people within the whole entire world. That's
Hmm.
not okay. That's not okay. There's more of us out there. Growing up in Sonora, we actually were in the mountains. There's two type of Yaquis. There's Yaquis who live in the mountains, Yaquis who live by the river, where originally our name come from, the Yaqui River.
Mm.
To this day, the land is still there
And the Yaqui River flows where?
in Mexico, in Sonora.
Okay.
Correct. And you can still go there to this day. So extremely Americanized. All the Yaquis have left and they've gone to the mountains. To this day, you can go to where my family was a part of prior to them also becoming Americanized and moving to the city. Just this generation. Before us, we were growing up as a child. I recall running through the mountains, running through the homes that were built by hand, the rivers, the little water systems that we created, you know, the
So do
grapes
you
that
know
we
how much,
raised.
did the Mexican government allocate land to the Yaqui?
They say they did, but if you go there, there is no official locations, just like Arizona, where
Mm.
they have the system intact, where they are documented. It's gotten to a level where our brothers and sisters just consider themselves Mexican.
So within the tribal lands, you were saying you have your own laws, your own
Correct.
governance,
Correct.
your own systems of everything,
Correct.
and nobody has any right to override that. Is that correct?
Nobody as in outsiders,
Yeah,
or
like American government officials or American governance do. Are you completely autonomous, or is that just sort of like a sugar coating on the fact that you really don't have autonomy? Is it true autonomy or not?
um, when I stated that, I stated past tense.
Hmm,
That's how we started. We've had that for centuries already, where we had the system.
right.
That was one of the main reasons why the Spaniards couldn't conquer us. Mexico couldn't conquer us. We had a stable system already. I would say even prior to Mexico, prior to the Aztecs knowing we had the system already. That's what I was saying. I was speaking past tense. Now it's just considered Mexico
So
due
it's being
to
broken.
how we've been separated. It brings me chills to even think about it. Exterminated, punished. The early 1900s when we were killed off, sold as slaves within our own land. Imagine being a slave in your own land, separated. Some of us ran up north. My family, some of them ran to Texas. Arizona, California. Some of us stood, half of us stood there in Sonora.
Mm.
So I was back and forth my whole life.
It's like the people that escaped from the South after the Civil War, right? Trying to find
Oh, correct.
lands that were safe for them. They ended
Correct.
up going all the way to Chicago. and-
Correct. Some fled, some stood, and they built from there. The same thing. Some stood in Sonora and spread it out through Durango.
You were saying
Chihuahua.
that you also studied culinary arts,
Correct.
and that I've seen more and more press about just cuisine. There's a restaurant
Mhm.
that opened that I think won a Michelin star in Minnesota, that is all indigenous recipes and indigenous ingredients.
I've read about that. That was
Yeah, I
beautiful.
think I passed it on to
That
you.
was beautiful.
And there just seem to be more and more popping up that
Oh,
there's
yeah.
finally a recognition that there is a separate cuisine
Mhm.
that is specific.
Correct. And everything, again, is falling into place. It's not, how do I say this? It's not, it's a miracle. It's a miracle. It's alignment. It's a miracle. It's a door being open with not only indigenous food being out there to having Indigenous Day to the laws changing for my indigenous people.
What do you mean
Early
by the
this-
laws changing?
Well, prior to October, the highest punishment of a Yaqui in a reservation would be a misdemeanor and up to 1 year of jail time, no matter what the severity
It
of.
was murder, if it was rape, nothing. It was
And
a
there
misdemeanor.
is a lot going on within the community that does not get spoken of, that does not get highlighted, and it's not brought up. And I'm willing to do that to save brothers and sisters from going through that. And the law is now finally felon, so it's changed to it's our time. It's
So
our
there's a
time, so we
judicial.
need to step in.
So there's a judicial system,
Correct.
and is there a court? So that means a court system and laws and regulations that govern everybody. And if somebody is convicted of a felony, where does that take place, and then what happens to that individual?
Well, it would just be the same process as any other American. For a while, it had
So you
two
mean it goes to the American jail system, or there's an internal jail system?
American.
American. I
Because
see.
within the indigenous communities, we don't.
You don't have any.
Correct. It's
I
it's
see.
not. Yeah. Yeah.
So when you say they're convicted of a felony, it's in the American court system, and the American judicial system then gives a punishment and
Correct.
jails them and determines the time and so forth.
Correct.
But
Yeah.
before, there was just basically a free-for-all.
Yeah.
It's
There
before
was
October.
a misdemeanor, 1 year the most, and that goes for unbelievable crimes
So
that
you
can think
think that there was an escalation of crime because there weren't any consequences? You think that it aggravated what was
Oh.
happening with the tribal lands?
Yeah, totally. And not saying that it was out of control, just saying that things happened that shouldn't have happened. Because within the Yaqui communities, from the beginning of time, our system was, for example, we kept each other accountable as leaders. Someone stole something, we would take it to our little console, to our little court system that we created as Yaquis. And the first time you did it, we'll allow you to give the item back. Second time you did it, you will give the item back and you will get a whip. There's whips that we had
You
that
get
would
corporal
whip
punishment,
within like 2 to 3 to 4 times.
lashes. they're
Correct,
called,
lashes. Now,
on bare skin.
on bareback skin. So naturally, we kept each other accountable to a higher power where we would stay as leaders within the community. So there was lines that a lot of us did not pass, and we kept it as a family.
And so this lash system existed until just now in October?
No.
It still
no.
exists?
No.
Oh.
I'm just stating due to how we had a system of punishment from the beginning versus we're just some indigenous people out in the wild killing things, killing each other, raping each other, stealing from each other, killing each other, which that was one of the worst crimes. And the punishment was to kill you. And it was automatic. It wasn't you have a whole year. It was you are considered a murderer. You will get murdered by tomorrow. You will get killed by tomorrow.
That was a punishment to be killed in return.
Okay, yeah, of course. Yeah, of
Wow.
course. So the reason why I bring that up is because naturally within our DNA, your DNA is like a gigabyte. It holds information. So yes, centuries later, we have nothing to do with that system, but it's within our blood to stay strong, to stay together, to stay as a community, to look out for each other, to love each other. the outside world of this Monopoly game that we were not wanting to be a part of, the reason why we were annihilated and punished, is already attacking us. So we stay together. But do things happen? Of course it happened. No one is perfect. We're all human. So that's the reason why I'm stating that thanks to the law.
Is the predominant religion, what is the predominant religion? Is there such a thing as organized religion within the Yaqui tribal system?
It varies. Mostly it would be a mixture of Catholicism, Christianity, and some paganism. Yeah.
And the pagan archive is maintained by oral tradition or?
Oral tradition. And it's mostly like certain dances that we do. Like we're famous for the deer on our head.
Mhm.
That comes from the pagan side. Things like so.
Okay.
Yeah, things like so.
And what would be some of the dishes that you would like to introduce if you were to have a restaurant or a venue where you could share your cuisine with others? What are some of your favorites that you grew up with?
Hmm. Let's see. It's very hard to say because their food is so delicious and so creative. Um, ay, ay, ay.
Do you have a lot of meat dishes, a lot of fish dishes,
We do,
grains?
and they're all so delicious. I can't choose one,
I'm going to
but
introduce a fact here. Like a lot of people may not be aware,
yeah.
but chocolate, corn,
Mm,
tomatoes, potatoes, uh, coffee. These are staples in a modern diet. I would say almost globally.
mhm,
You know, tomatoes are used prolifically in Greece and Italian cuisine and all the Mediterranean. Potatoes became known as the staple of Ireland.
mhm.
And yet most people don't know that these all came back to Europe and were incorporated into European cuisine from the Americas.
Oh yeah,
Bubble gum,
yeah.
chewing gum as well. So I guess these are some ingredients that you would be using.
Of course, of
Okay.
course. And they're all, as you can physically tell, I love them all.
Mhm.
It's so hard to choose one. But that's beautiful that you brought that up.
And how did you had ovens? I know that from seeing some of the remains of the old cities and stuff. So there were baking ovens. There was
Correct,
also cooking platforms that
correct,
were made out of clay.
correct. Yeah, and there was a lot of underground cooking as well.
Okay.
That's what we would do a lot with our meats, with our deer meats, with our goat meats, with our cow meats. A lot of it was cooked underground, which gave it a very rich flavor, very delicious. And that's where the birria came from. It's a very popular thing around the world right now with the birria tacos and the
Mm.
birria quesadillas. That's where one of the ideas came from the
I
tribes cooking the meat
I
underground.
remember having mochomos, which are ants, tacos of ants in Guanajuato.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've had grasshoppers too.
So
It's
that's
something
a
else.
dish that's becoming more probably using insects
Mhm.
as meals is becoming more common because it's high protein
Yeah,
and easy to sort of culture and grow. And
correct.
was that part of your childhood?
No, no, we
Okay.
didn't have that. We
No
had
grasshoppers or
no, no, no. I tried the grasshopper as an adult. We didn't do insects.
okay.
Yeah, we did a lot of meats, a lot of chickens,
Do you
goats,
have any
fish.
beverages?
Um, yeah, alcohol or non-alcohol, because we have a very good mezcal in Sonora that not a
Oh,
lot of people know about.
I see.
It's a white mezcal. It's
Mm,
a mezcal. It's normally like a nice golden color.
hmm.
It's a pure white mezcal, very smooth, delicious. Try it out.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't drink, but I'll take your word for it. Um, did you spend a lot of time at the beach? I know there's a huge part of the Yaqui tribe that's
Yes,
sea attached to the sea, right?
correct. I was blessed to be raised on both ends. Again, there's two types of Yaquis, the ones who are by
So
the
both
ocean.
your parents are Yaqui.
Correct. Yeah. But my mother's side, they were the ones who ran up to Texas.
I
They went
see.
out to hide in Texas.
Mm,
My father's side stood in Sonora, so which were in the mountains. My
hmm.
grandfather, great grandfather, and his buddies at the time, childhood friends,
So
got
this would have been
together
at the
and
beginning, the end of the 1800s, your great grandfather?
correct. They got together and created their own. As I stated, Yaquis have their system down, very team-based people.
Mm,
They created their own little town in a hidden mountains in Mexico. And going to visit my father's side growing up, I was blessed with that experience of both the mountains, where there was a couple of families who were all very close. We all were in each other's homes.
mm.
Um, to this day, we keep in contact. A lot of the families married with each other. Um, So
What
we
is
are
a
still
typical furnishing like within a Yaqui home?
a lot of
Is it
bamboo and wood.
bamboo and wood?
And then we do the Y, or we put a lot of Ys on there. We
Mm-hmm.
shape the wood like with a Y.
Uh-huh.
It's really good support.
Right.
So you'll see a lot of braiding of bamboo and wood, and then a lot of Ys as the support system. Yeah. So again, going back to what I was stating, that I was blessed with both ends, the ocean and the mountains.
Mm-hmm.
So beautiful. It's so beautiful. We were out there hunting for crabs, for fish.
So
It
what was
was
that like leaving that and then living in Los Angeles?
it was a huge confusion.
Were you
Whew,
accepted or did you always feel different?
always different, and beyond just being indigenous, being a openly homosexual man, to it was a lot everywhere. You were never enough.
Mm.
You were never Yaqui enough in Sonora. You were never Mexican enough because Yaqui Sonora is in Mexico. You didn't speak enough Spanish. You didn't speak enough Yaqui. In America, you weren't American enough. You had an accent. You were a little slower in the English department, so you had to take ESL classes. You know, to our communities, there's a lot of homophobia.
Is there?
There was now, because again, it's 2022. A lot of things are, the Pandora box has opened. So again, as I stated earlier within the interview, that all that's been hiding, and we have power now, and we're now remolding the future for our future generations to not go through that. So it's not as bad now as an adult as when I was a child.
Where did you feel most at home?
In Sonora,
In Sonora?
yes, which we spent more time there growing up. It's only like an 11-hour drive from
Mm-hmm.
where we lived in the United States. So any excuse we had, we'll drive there. Christmas, summer vacations, long weekends, you name it. I pretty much went to school out here and lived out there.
I see.
Yeah, and we still have lands if you like to go
And
one
did a
day.
lot of people feel like you of the tribe, or was that more specifically you?
Um,
Like, was it like a sense of relief? Like you could relax, like this is where I can be myself when you were in Sonora? Is that why you say that?
well, I can't speak for others, but the second question that you asked, if I felt more relieved, I felt more at home.
Yeah.
In the city, I didn't feel at home. In the city, it was low income. It was South Central. It was the projects, public housings, the systems that a lot of my brothers and sisters, and I just don't mean indigenous, I mean Latinos, African Americans, LGBTQ, they don't make it out of there. They just don't. It's a blessing that I'm sitting here. There is a calling that I believe in, God, or whatever the viewers believe in, I respect it, has me here for a reason. A lot of my brothers and sisters from both Sonora or here in the United States don't make it. They die young, they fall into drugs, they have children underage, they get married underage, they grow up too quick, they escape, never look back. There's a lot out there. There's a lot. And because of going back to how we started the conversation earlier, we don't have representation. We don't have a guidance. We don't have someone we can look up to and say, I'm going to be like that one. There's a Yaqui and a councilman. There is a Yaqui as a president. There is a Yaqui on TV. There is a Yaqui on the magazine. There is an indigenous.
I think that actually applies to a lot of people.
Yes.
It's not specific to your experience because of your culture.
Correct.
I think that has to do with gender as well.
Yes.
I think that as a female, since I'm boldly feminine, never seen a female president.
Exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
Kamala Harris is pretty invisible in spite of the fact that she's our first female vice president. We talk about mentors. You were saying you never really had anybody you could use as a mentor, but
Correct.
I would say that was pretty sparse to non-existent for me too.
Correct. Correct. And this is why, as I stated earlier within the conversation, that we are here representing all of.
The evolution of humanity from the old ways into a new era.
Correct. Correct. And this is why, again, from the beginning of the conversation, I stated that indigenous state, this doesn't mean indigenous. It means everyone who has not had a voice.
Right.
May it be a woman, may it be LGBTQ, may it be African Americans or Africans, excuse me. May it be low income, Latinos.
I think we also have a map, if we could pull it up, that's the tribes' lands. And this is, as you can see, well, you may not be able to, but at the bottom, it goes all the way into the Yucatan Peninsula. But the whole of the continent was covered in territories that were indigenously managed and populated. And all of them were disenfranchised. And we're living with the consequences of that today.
Correct.
I grew up in Vancouver, BC. We have the Salish and the Chinooks, and I don't even know all of them, but they are mostly seafaring nations.
Mm.
Canada has a little bit of a different system, but I found out recently, and that was kind of shocking to me, having grown up there. Yes, we have the Queen on our money, and the Queen of England just passed away, so now it's King Charles.
Mm.
But it was shocking to me to know that 90% of Canada, the land of Canada, is owned by the Queen, which means that all of these people don't have any rights to it, but she does now. And we never had a war. There was never a revolution in Canada. There were treaties, I would assume, but I still can't make sense of how that happened. It's the second largest or the largest country in landmass in the world, and it belongs to one person. Unbelievable compared to all the people that called it theirs.
Yeah.
So that is colonialism. And I'm not expert enough to dig into that, but it is shocking.
Same. And that's what, again, Indigenous Day also represents. We are finally having a voice for all,
Right.
where the colonization is finally being fought off, is finally
Being denied, like as
correct.
being the denominator that defines who you are.
Correct. And not only for those who were the ones who were exterminated, punished, killed, but also the ones who come from a family who were
Sure.
the ones who played a role within that process. They're waking up. They're
Well,
awoke, as
yeah.
the saying goes. They're
Well,
like, whoa,
Well,
that's
we're
not
also
okay.
talking about, look at what's happening in Iran right now. The women are being exterminated to keep them quiet. We
Mhm.
have rampant femicides in Mexico. And my background is Greek. There's a lot of femicide going on in Greece right now. Wherever women or those that do not want to be subjugated fight back,
Yeah.
they will be exterminated.
Yeah. And it's ugly because it's sometimes it's extermination without even knowing the food matrix, the food that they provide us with as they're getting us sick, they're aging us faster. They're
What do you
giving
mean by that?
the food diets,
Yeah.
extermination. It's more than just you're going up to someone and physically just murdering them to
Oh,
remove
you're
them.
saying like that for your people, it was the introduction of toxic foods that
Correct.
also intentionally
Correct.
killing them off.
Oh yeah, and I mean more than just to indigenous people. All of us in the United States, around the world. There's some places like France. They have laws where they would not feed, not even their animals, what we consume at Taco Bell. The level of grade of food, of meat. It's a
Hmm.
whole other topic we can speak of, but that's also what's being used
Well,
to.
even I was at Whole Foods, and they have somebody on staff that can consult with you about the vitamin supplements and so forth, that whole area they have. And
Yeah.
he was from Uruguay, no, Brazil. He was Brazilian and was a PhD on biochemistry there.
Yeah.
So a physician by training. And he was like, this is the only place in the world you have access to all of these as though they're not affecting you, as though they're innocuous. He goes, these are medicinal. These have strong properties that affect you physiologically.
Oh yeah.
And in the United States, you can buy them just like candy.
Mhm.
That doesn't happen anywhere else.
Yeah.
So anyway, this has been so interesting.
I know.
Thank you so much for joining
You're
me.
very welcome. Thank you for
I hope
having me.
everybody else has enjoyed it. I think it's eye-opening that we are living in a country that's one of the most admired in the world for its consumerism and capitalism. And it's on the back of a landmass that was appropriated. So thanks today for joining us, and Tanori. And
Anytime.
Boldly Feminine is available on all the major podcast platforms. So you can find me on iTunes. You can find me on Amazon Music, Apple, Spotify, and there's a list in the show notes. The show notes are also available online. And please tune in for the next time. Thank you.
Goodbye, guys.
Bye.
Love you guys so much.
So thank you so much for joining me today. This is Constantina Malia with Boldly Feminine. You can find me on all the social networks like Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Boldly Feminine, at Boldly Feminine, at Malia Collection is my first brand. And you can find the podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, iHeart, Amazon Music, and please feel free. None of the information shared is in my interviews is meant to be professional. It is colloquial, or conversations are ad hoc, and I don't want you to take them as newsworthy so much as conversational. Thank you so much for joining me. I can't wait for you to tune in for the next time. As you can tell, the conversations are always diverse and informative, and I hope fun as well. So thank you, and we'll see you soon.